Hey everyone, ready to jump into work-life balance? I think we're all trying to find that balance, right?
It really is something everyone's after.
Yeah, but it's like everywhere you look, someone's got a new article or a podcast, or they're like the expert telling you how to do it.
You're right. It's so much information out there, it gets confusing.
So we're going to try something a little different.
Okay.
We're doing a deep dive into a popular podcast episode all about the myths of work-life balance. We'll break it down, see what we can learn, and figure out what really matters.
I like it. Where should we start?
Let's go for the biggest myth. That balance means you got to split your time, like 50-50, with work and your personal life. I've totally been there.
Ugh, so common.
Yeah,
And it's frustrating because, let's be real, it never really works out like that.
right.
The podcast we're looking at had this great example. Like, imagine you're juggling, right? You're trying to keep all these balls in the air. Work, family, friends, hobbies, taking care of yourself.
Okay, I can see where this is going.
Some of those balls, they're glass.
Oh.
Like super fragile. They need you to pay extra attention.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that's a huge project at work, or someone in your family needs you more right now. Then you got the rubber balls.
Yeah.
Those can bounce back even if you drop them for a bit.
So it's not about each ball getting the same airtime. It's about figuring out which ones need you the most right now.
Exactly.
Right.
Some weeks, those glass balls just need more, and that's all right. True balance isn't about sticking to a schedule no matter what. It's about making sure your energy, your focus goes where it's needed most.
Makes so much more sense. It's like, who can be perfect every single day?
Right.
Like, think about this week. Are there days where work comes first and others where it's family?
Yeah.
It's about finding that rhythm that works for you.
That's what the podcast says, too. Life has its ups and downs. Sometimes work needs more from you. It doesn't mean you failed. It's about the big picture.
Yeah, ditch the schedule and just go with the flow. All right, what about this one? I think a lot of us believe this deep down. If I'm balanced, then I'm never stressed.
Ah, the dream. Always calm and in control. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
But get this, the podcast says a little stress can actually be good for you.
Wait, for real? I thought stress was the enemy.
Not always. It depends. Like a little bit of stress, it can really push you to do your best.
Okay.
Think about when you overcome a challenge, that feeling of, I did it. That's stress, but it's working for you, not against you. They even had a psychologist on the podcast, and they called it eustress, the good kind of stress, the kind that helps you grow.
So it's not about getting rid of stress completely, but more about handling it the right way.
You got it. And that's where they gave some really good tips that I even use myself.
Yeah.
It's all about making time to de-stress.
Like just taking breaks during the day,
Exactly.
or making plans with friends, or doing something fun just for you.
Those are great examples. Doing little things for yourself, it makes a big difference.
It's funny how we always think of stress as a bad thing, like something to avoid. But maybe we need to see it differently.
I think so too. They even said to think of stress like a wave. You can't stop the waves from coming, but you can learn to surf.
Oh, that's a good one.
And just like surfers need to paddle back out after a wave,
Yeah.
we need to take time to recover, get ready for what's next.
That's such a good way to put it. Okay, we busted the myth of 50-50 split and the stress-free life myth. What about this one? You got to separate work and personal life completely.
Yeah,
It's tough these days,
it is.
especially with so many people working from home. The lines are blurred.
You're so right. The podcast even said trying to separate them totally, it's not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not even what we want.
Interesting. So if we're not trying to keep them totally separate, what are we going for?
They called it integration. It's not about walls between work and life.
Yeah.
It's about letting them flow together, but still having boundaries.
Like a Venn diagram instead of two separate boxes?
Perfect example. Like
Mhm.
instead of that strict 9 to 5, maybe you take a break to go for a walk with your family or run an errand. Then you do emails later.
So it's about making it work for you and being okay with changing things up.
That's the key. Be intentional about it. It's not letting work take over your whole life, but choosing when and how to let it in. The host even said when her kids are at school, that's her work time. Then evenings are for family dinner and stuff.
I like that. It's like integration can actually give you more flexibility.
That's exactly it. But you got to have boundaries.
Yeah.
Work can't control everything.
Sure.
They talked about having a workspace, even if you work from home, and turning off notifications on your phone to have some personal time.
So important, especially now when everyone's always connected. It's about finding ways to unplug, even if you can't totally separate things. Okay, ready to bust another myth. Once you're balanced for good.
Huh?
Like you reach this magical place and think, I'm here, I'm balanced.
If only. The podcast laughed at that idea. Balance isn't the finish line.
It's more like a dance, yeah.
Exactly. They said it's like a tightrope walker, always adjusting to stay balanced.
Makes sense.
Our lives are always changing. What we want changes, new things come up, our energy goes up and down.
So it's more about noticing those changes and changing how we do things.
You got it.
Yeah.
They said to check in with yourself, ask what's working, what's not, what needs to change. They even said to do a balance audit every few months, see how you're doing in different areas of your life.
I love that. Like a checkup, but for your well-being. Okay, myth number 5, and this one hits home in our go, go, go world. Balance means you're never too busy or overwhelmed. We all want that calm feeling, but is it even real?
It's tough. The podcast said being busy sometimes, even overwhelmed, it's just part of life. It's not about being perfectly zen all the time. It's about handling those ups and downs so you don't burn out.
So it's more about knowing when things are too much and taking a break, even when you're busy.
Absolutely. And they had some great tips for those crazy busy times.
Yeah.
Like taking mini breaks, just 5 or 10 minutes to step away from everything, take some deep breaths, maybe listen to some music.
I need to get better at that. I usually just keep going and going.
They also said to plan some time off after a big project, even just a day or two, to totally unplug and recharge. It's about stopping that feeling of being overwhelmed all the time.
It's easy to think we always got to be on, but that's just not possible forever.
Nope. And the podcast said being busy doesn't mean you're better or more successful. It's about changing our mindset from doing more to being more. Okay, last myth. You ready?
Get me.
It's the myth that balance has to look the same for everyone.
Oh, that's a tough one. It's so easy to compare, right? You see everyone on social media with their perfect morning routines and their fancy calendars, and they make it look so easy. It makes you feel like you're doing something wrong.
The podcast called that out. They said we're always comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. What's important is that balance is personal. It's not about fitting into some mold. It's about building a life that works for you, your values, your priorities, even your personality.
So what works for someone who loves routines and schedules might not work for someone who likes to go with the flow.
Exactly. They even gave an example about 2 friends. One loves structure and routine, the other one total free spirit. They both find balance, but in completely different ways.
It's like those personality tests, introvert or extrovert. We all need different things to feel good and get things done.
That's it. Knowing yourself is so important. The podcast said to think about what makes you happy, what drains your energy, and what are your non-negotiables, those things you absolutely need to have in your life to feel balanced.
Love that. It's about figuring out what balance means for you, not trying to copy someone else.
Exactly. Make a life that feels right for you.
So we busted 6 myths about work-life balance. What does all this mean for our listeners? What's the key takeaway?
I think the biggest thing is balance isn't about reaching some perfect state. It's a constant process of learning, adjusting, figuring out what's important. It's about letting go of the shoulds and accepting that life is messy and always changing.
It's finding that middle ground between pushing towards your goals, but also knowing when to relax and recharge.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey. Sometimes you'll feel totally balanced, other times not so much. Keep trying new things, keep adjusting, and always come back to what truly matters.
And ditch those myths. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you some things to think about and inspired you to create a version of balance that feels right for you. Catch you on the next one.
It's like balance has to look the same for everyone.
Oh, that's a sneaky one. Because it makes you feel like you're not doing enough. We've
Yeah.
all been there. Like you're scrolling through social media and you see someone with their perfect morning, their calendar all color-coded,
Oh,
and they're just juggling everything like it's nothing. Then you start to feel bad about yourself.
Totally. The podcast called it out like we're comparing what's going on behind the scenes for us
Yeah.
to everyone else's highlight reel.
Yeah.
What they said was balance is like really personal. It's not about fitting into a box. It's about making a life that works for you,
Yeah.
your values, your priorities, even your personality type.
So like what works for someone who's super organized and loves schedules might not work for someone who just likes to go with the flow.
Exactly. They even use this example of 2 friends. One's all about structure and routines, the other one's super spontaneous.
Oh, I know those types.
And they both found balance, but it looks completely different for each of them.
It's like those personality tests, you know? Introvert, extrovert. We all need different things to feel good and get stuff done.
That's a great point. And that's why they said knowing yourself is super important. They said to think about what makes you happy, what just drains your energy, and what are your non-negotiables, the things you got to have in your life to feel balanced.
I like that. It's about figuring out what balance means to you, not trying to be like someone else.
Exactly. Create a life that feels right for you, authentically you.
So we just busted 6 myths about work-life balance.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for everyone listening? What's the one thing to take away?
I think the biggest takeaway is balance isn't about getting to some perfect place and staying there. It's more like this constant learning process.
Yeah.
You adjust, you figure out what's important, and you got to let go of all the shoulds and accept that life is going to be messy and things change all the time.
It's about like finding that balance between pushing towards your goals, but also knowing when to chill out and recharge, right?
Exactly. And don't forget, it's a journey, not a destination. Some days you'll feel super balanced, others not so much.
Yeah.
The key is to keep trying, keep making changes, and keep coming back to what matters most to you.
And definitely ditch those myths. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into work-life balance. We hope it gave you some good ideas and inspired you to create a version of balance that feels right for you. Catch you on the next episode.